Now, we will be definitely doing some live type of demo things with incident response. We'll be talking about, we'll show some different types of incidents that might occur. But we also have to, just talk about incident response as a whole, what it is, and all the different things revolving around incident response that are going on right now. So moving on. So again, these types of things, right? I feel like I'm beating a dead horse sometimes with a lot of this, but you know, it's still not getting through to people, right? So, basic terminology, right? An incident, right? What is incident response? Well, first you have to define an incident, right? Keep in mind too that incidents aren't always a direct result of some sort of cyber attack, right? If you look at the ITIL framework, I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with it. An incident could be anything, right? An incident could be a user reporting that they couldn't log into something, right? When you start investigating the incident, it could turn into some type of problem, which could also lead to some sort of link back to some type of cyber attack or other misconfiguration or issue. So, but generally speaking, when a lot of people say, hey, incident response, we really are talking about incident response in regards to cyber attacks, right? So primarily we're dealing with, data breaches. And with the data breach, you're going to have some sort of sensitive data or PII info that gets released. And with the cyber attack, specifically, it's going to be another type of thing that happens that's going to adversely affect your operations. Well, what's that? Well, it's somebody's email account getting compromised, like a CEO. Somebody basically deploying ransomware in your network. We'll talk about that shortly. Denial of service attacks. Those are still pretty big deal. Even with all the modern technology we have out there today, kind of stop distributed denial of service attacks. They still occur, and I can almost guarantee you, it being Christmas season, right? Everybody's going to be getting those brand new gaming consoles, and they're going to have every Christmas it happens. Some threat group says, "Oh, we're going to DDoS everybody," and it ruins everybody's Christmas day, so they can't play their video games. So companies, they really have to have a response, and it's basically how you deal with all these different types of incidents, right? So I always like to use the term, data-driven incident response, right? So I'll go back to that example that we had with, the Xbox, the gaming consoles and everything. This has happened pretty much every single release, or even almost every Christmas, where there's like a big console gaming war type thing. Online games get breached, online games get distributed on a service attack. And it's an issue every single year. So, the data is out there showing what's going to happen. However, these organizations, again, Xbox, the video game developers, the video game companies, they're not really taking it seriously. And the same can be said for, even healthcare industry, basically industry, all, across all industries, right? Where we talk about, ransomware. It's on the news every single day now. 5-6 years ago, nobody even really knew what ransomware was, but now it's out there. There's a news report about it every single day. Okay, so again, there's a lot of data out there, and yet organizations still aren't planning for this type of thing. So when we talk about these incidents, the goals of incident response, we have to really look into. We want to limit the scope of the attack as much as possible, limit the technical damage, limit the financial damage. So, again, these are all just bullet points, but when it comes down to it, if you don't have a good incident response plan, or even a team in place to help you respond to these incidents, your company is going to be in bad shape when they eventually do get hit with a cyber attack. It's a matter of time. Everybody's going to get some form of cyber attack that hits them. I mean, ultimately, what we'd like to see is that an intrusion is stopped as soon as it's detected, and basically all systems are able to return to normal function with minimal impact, right? And I think another thing to kind of highlight here is that businesses don't really take this seriously until you get hit, right? You see it happen all the time, especially with ransomware, right? Where ransomware um, attacks your system and you end up being down for days on end, and then it's always after, oh, what did we do wrong? How do we prevent this? Everybody seems to be very concerned about it at that time. However, having a good incident response plan that covers things like that would certainly help you to begin with. So let's kind of look at some stats here. And this first bullet item right here is, well, pretty much all this data is straight from IBM and Pomon Institute. The average cost of a data breach in 2020 is $3.86 million. So think about that, right? If you have a data breach, and we're talking about intellectual property that might have gotten lost, right? We're talking about downtime because of systems. You're talking about new tools you have to build and deploy, new systems you might have to build and deploy, and even like cyber insurance, things like that. If you have to do a payout of cyber insurance, you're talking, roughly $4 million. Now, maybe if you had, invested into your IT tools, your IT infrastructure, and incident response tools, yeah, $3.86 million for a breach, but maybe, hey, that license for that particular tool, your security person was asked for is $10,000 a year, right? And it could have saved you a lot of time and headache. On top of that, the average cost to small businesses is roughly $200,000. I think this bullet point right here is the biggest thing for me, where it's like average downtime is about 19 days. Okay. So depending on how your business model, and not to mention if you don't have a good business continuity plan, business continuity management plan, which is something, plug for us. We're going to be talking about that upcoming. I'll give the details of that later on. But your business can't function. And what does that mean? Well, it means you're not bringing in revenue, right? And if you're not bringing in revenue, there's a very real potential that your business ceases to exist. And this has happened. Go Google it after this thing. Look up businesses that have ceased to exist because of ransomware and other types of cyber attacks. So again, my whole point in this whole section is, these attacks will continue until organizations take these threats seriously. And one other thing, the real cost of this type, I imagine most people on this call are familiar with some type of cyber liability insurance. Compass's cyber liability insurance, we didn't have any incidents. We've never used this policy, right? We're security tested, all our securities, 100%, right? And when we got our bill for the new year, that bill went up by 45%. So think about that, right? Why is that? Well, it's because these liability companies are having to pay out a lot more, right? And that's affecting everybody, right? And so if you get hit with some sort of ransomware, or you get hit with some sort of adverse event and you have to use your cyber liability insurance, that's hurting everybody. So more, and I'm sorry, I really kind of talk about this, I call this the real talk section, where, some of the things that we really have to be concerned with, and obviously, the cost associated, that's real stuff that we have to worry about. Some other things that we have to talk about right now is the threats to your organization. So we have external threats, right? External threats, and we can actually kind of lump all these categories, these threat actors, into one category, right? These are all actually external threats to your organization. And when you talk about it, the thing that we see a lot is, some type of organized crime or a nation state sponsoring an attack, right? The organized crime one's interesting because those guys have primarily been responsible for ransomware deployments and things like that. Talk about one called the Maze Cartel, which actually about 2 weeks ago announced that they were spinning down their operations. However, what happened, about 6 other organizations that are basically this same type of threat actor group came into play, and they're going to continue to do this. So It's not going away anytime soon. With external threats, you know, you have to make sure that your perimeter is secure. You have to make sure that you know how to deal with, you know, some type of distributed denial of service attack. You have to make sure that you know that your users are your weakest link. You know, they can fall victim to phishing, and we'll do some of that later on. And that third item there, hacktivists, this is still kind of a major concern. When we look at hacktivism, even with all these different protests going on, hacktivists are still very present. Some people don't talk about them enough, but the hacker group Anonymous is actually a hacktivist group. And even recently, they were able to break into police records and release names and addresses of police officers. And as you can imagine, with the the hostile environment we have right now, that's not good for those police officers, especially having their data, they're doxing and they're getting their data put out all over the internet. And that's a really scary thing. So these are all things that we have to really take seriously because it's happening and it's becoming even more of an issue now than ever when you consider that everybody is working remote. So detecting these types of attacks, right? This item here, we talk about external notification. Very rare is it that you get somebody telling you were hacked, right? So it comes down to somebody in your organization is telling you, hey, you got hacked. You better hope you're not on any type of news site, right? And see that you got hacked and you don't know about it, right? Especially if your CEO or the president of the company sees that before you do and he's telling you about it, that's definitely no go. And some cases, law enforcement, especially when we talk about that state agency, the nation state, breaking into people, they will contact you and say, hey, just so you know, we have some information, some intel that you may have been hacked. We're talking about the FBI mainly. And secondary external fraud monitoring. Some people's banks have these alerts or credit agencies have alerts spun up to where they can actually tell you, oh, there's some unusual activity on your account. When you get into this space, that's a real problem for you if you're having somebody else tell you you have an issue, right? So that means you're already in a bad way. You really have to look into your incident response plan and start enacting some of the items in there. And detection, so internal discovery, someone in your organization sees something, your organization discovers the incident without any assistance. Intrusion detection systems, right? Those are really lumped into other systems, right? You have your firewall, you have your intrusion detection system, and they alert you to anomalies. EDR system, enhanced detection response. This is kind of where it's at right now. This is where, live incident handling becomes really important. We have to, and we're going to highlight this more a little bit later during a further live demo, but these systems are what's going to help you respond the quickest. Okay, internal security processes, things like that really help you when you're dealing with things like, oh, hey, why is this person requesting a money transfer? They've never done this before. Why are they saying there's an account change? There's other types of business processes, internal security processes that should be in place that detect that type of thing. And then finally, there's like that user reported problem, right? So I'd like to kind of highlight that right now by doing a quick demo and weird file names. So like, yeah, what's up with those weird file names? Let's see what happens. And this is for anybody that's never really seen any type of ransomware get kicked off. And this is a real simplistic demonstration here. Let me pull this over. And I'm assuming everybody's seeing my screen here. If you're not, somebody unmute themselves and let me know as quickly as possible. But if we look here, this is just your typical Windows server. It's a little bit older version, right? And hey, we got some files here. Oh, the beautiful people. Okay, let's take a look at some of these beautiful people. I don't know if that guy is all that beautiful. I don't know. And these are just members of the Compass team, so we're just kind of have fun. Oh yeah, she's pretty beautiful. That guy is super handsome right there. Oh, that guy, he's the best looking guy in this whole thing. I mean, I can tell you that for sure. That guy, he's not bad looking, not bad looking, not as good as this guy, right? But say you're an end user, right? Oh yeah, that guy, no bueno on that guy. But say you're an end user, right? And you're sitting there and you're on your computer or you're on a file server share and you're browsing the internet and you click on a link and then it gives you a pop-up about, oh, hey, you won something, or, you're responding to an email, or even if you're not really doing anything except doing your normal work, and you all of a sudden, right? All of a sudden you're just sitting there and you're working and you're, again, going through this nice, beautiful people section. Oh yeah, that's, again, another guy, nice guy there. And hold on, this might not have kicked off like it was supposed to. Sorry. But you're sitting there, you're working along, and next thing you know, you start seeing, the different file names change. Normally by this point, this ransomware I have is kicking off. So let's just give it a second. Maybe I didn't click on it properly. Live demos, they never really work out all that great. Come on, you kick in. All right, well, we'll come back to it in a second. Sorry about that. But what you're gonna end up observing is that oh, there it goes. Figures. Your file names change, right? And then I'll have to check the coding of this, but your file names change, right? And you see some type of weird extension, you start kind of freaking out and you go, hey, what's going on here? I don't know what's going on. You can't open your files anymore. That's a ransomware attack, right? And it's usually followed by, once that ransomware attack is all done, it's followed by, a message like this. And, well, hey, that's an uglier version of that other guy. So, but that's exactly what ransomware looks like. So that's what's up with those weird file names. If you see any hint of anything like this in your organization, you have to immediately tell somebody, and I would even say disconnect your system to prevent it from happening further. But we'll go into that more later on, kind of what to do when this type of thing happens, okay? Let's move on here. So 280, okay? 280. So basically that is the average time to identify and contain a data breach, right? 280 days, right? Think about that. That's like, it's almost half a year, right? I mean, that is. It's insane. It's more than half a year. I'm sorry. It's way more than half a year. So 280 days from start to finish, right? Meaning that, hey, you detected the breach, and now you're fully, the breach is kind of gone, right? So, during that time, especially with the types of attacks we're seeing, threat actors are in your system and they're basically collecting your data, they're mapping out your systems, they're figuring out your processes, and then they're breaching you. And then finally from that point, right? And I said earlier, the average time that they're in there is 19 days. That's true, right? But when they have active connections into your system is 19 days. But however, they started the breach much earlier on. They set their processes in place and then they're out, and then you're left to deal with the fallout. Okay, so keep that in mind. That's a huge number. So what's going to really kind of help us here is the speed of containment. Last couple of major incidents we've dealt with, I've seen threat actors in systems on average for about 3 months, right? Again, that's a very long time. Like, I've seen them start in there. They were in there 3 months before they actually executed their final action. So it's important to have a good speed of detection. Like, if they're sitting there in your systems for 3 months, that's a really big deal, because again, what's happening is mapping your backup systems and mapping your bank accounts. They're getting all this info on you. And their real goal is to just destroy you, right? To destroy you and make you pay and steal your data. Now, if you, these numbers here, $1 million average savings containing a breach in less than 200 days, meaning that from the time of detection to the time of restore, you're going to actually end up saving yourself on average $1 million, right? And these statistics are, again, from IBM. And they're basically across all industries of all sizes. Granted, some organizations are a little smaller and might not have that much in savings, but on average. So kind of circling back, right, where we really again start talking about incident response, and then we're going to break it down into separate phases of incident response. And then we're going to really kind of look into what things we can do to deal with common incidents, or the incidents I believe are like the most prevalent out there. So SANS breaks down incident response into 6 different categories. We have preparation, identification, containment, eradication, recovery, and lessons learned. We're going to dig into these a little more in depth on the following slides. So preparation, people, who is responsible for doing what? With your preparation, you got to have a team ready to respond to these types of incidents. Not all organizations can basically have an IR team ready on standby. It's just not going to happen. So with that preparation, you could hire a company, like Compass. We actually do have instant response retainer services because, a lot of our customers go, oh, we don't have the staff to handle this. Would you come in and help us if there's an incident? And of course, that's what we're here for. But a lot of companies don't have that ability. So what you do is you pick from your systems internally and you go, hey, in the event of a major incident, you guys are on the IR team, right? The next thing you want to really look into is communication, right? How are you going to communicate to your internal people that something going on, right? Is your plan to actually send an email? Well, what if your email systems are down? How are you going to send that communication? So you want to have some other out-of-band communication. Your different systems and technology, you want to make sure that you have a good mapping of all your systems and tools that you can use to deal with this incident. And finally, an inventory, right? An inventory is probably one of the most important things out of this whole list, is because if you don't know what you have, you definitely don't know what's going to be affected, okay? The next phase of this, right, is obviously, and I'm sorry, preparation also comes with, having that incident response plan. You have a good frame, and all these items are part of your incident response plan, right? And they will help you along when an incident actually occurs, as long as you stick to the plan, right? If you have a plan, reference it, right? Use it as a good starting point. It may not be perfect, and you could adjust it later on, and that's what comes into place in the lessons learned. If we look at identification, what happened, you got to try to figure out, okay, what type of incidents are we experiencing? Are you seeing those weird file names like I showed you? If that's the case, we have ransomware. What systems are affected by this? Well, how do you know, right? The way you know is, say if you have 1,000 servers, what are you gonna do? You're gonna go on each one of those servers? No, you're gonna have to use some type of tool. And again, we'll get into that a little later. Containment, limit the magnitude of the issue. Obviously, with that ransomware, if that pops up on one system, you certainly don't want it to pop up and spread to other systems. How are you going to do that? Are you going to go shut off all your servers until you can figure it out? Probably not a good idea. But you want to make sure that you can, respond to that on a mass scale, right? Eradication would be, everybody knows this, cleaning up the issues, moving ahead, and recovery, rebuilding the different systems, restoring systems, and lessons learned. Did the process work? What can be fixed next time? So I know I talked about these a little bit already, but we're going to break them down a little further into each category. So with preparation, one of the major things you want to do is create a checklist, what to do during a particular incident, right? Now, it's really hard to judge at any given time what incident you're going to be experiencing, but that's where that data-driven incident response comes into place, right? Are you going to create a checklist for an incident on the Stuxnet worm, which happened about 20 years ago? No, right? You're not going to do that. Or even the, the code red worm, right? Are you going to create an incident plan or an incident checklist to deal with that? No. But what you could do is create an incident checklist to deal with ransomware. Oh, an incident checklist to deal with, hey, the CEO's Microsoft 365 or Gmail account got compromised. And then from there, you could develop those little mini plans, right? I like to call them incident response procedures, right? Because your incident response plan is overall, but then on each little subsection, you have an incident response procedure to deal with those particular incidents. And you're not going to get every single possible incident, but you know what? If you don't have a plan for dealing with ransomware as of right now, you're going to be in trouble. Then the next thing with preparation, you want to make sure, like I mentioned earlier, you have the different tools in place. You want to make sure that those tools that you're going to use are the most secure systems that you have, right? Because recently, during an engagement, we saw that, hey, there was actually a tool available, or a tool that they had, and it was dead in the water. Why? Well, because it got infected with the same thing that everything else got infected with. So how good is that tool going to be for you if you didn't prep it for that attack, or segment it out, or have it in a completely separate system with completely different passwords? People, that's another important thing. Like, who's in charge, right? Like, who's gonna guide the incident response, right? Usually it comes down to like security, chief information security officer, the CIO. What you don't want is the CEO, who knows nothing about technology, interfering with this process. I've seen this happen a bunch of times, where you have people that don't really know what's going on, and yet they're, trying to say, do this, do that, do that. You need to really make sure that whoever is in charge knows how to lead this response effort, and knows how to guide the different people that are going to be involved in fixing it in the correct direction. Some major stakeholders are going to be the business unit. Well, why the business unit? Well, because everything runs on IT. So if IT is down, then the business unit can't necessarily operate unless you have, again, that good business continuity, business management plan. IT staff, obviously, they're going to have to deal with a lot of this, because they're going to be responsible for restoring the systems. And then finally, your security staff, not necessarily your physical security, like Hank, the guard at the door, but your security guys who are in charge of detecting and what the current trends are and things like that, should be handling that type of thing. Communication is key. You have to let your users know what's going on. You can't just leave them in the dark. You have to say, hey, you don't necessarily have to tell them, oh, hey, we got hacked bad, but you can tell, hey, systems are down as of right now. We're working on the issue. You should have a center of operations, your incident response center, break it out in a conference room, and you should have meetings as things change, right? As you discover new items, and as you bring systems back online. And then also on top of that, external communication, sometimes, depend if you're a hospital, right, and your systems go down, that's a big event, right? So you might have to report that to the news media. You want to be careful, though. You want to keep your image intact. So that's why a good public relations or marketing person should be involved in the whole preparation phase. Okay, moving in. Assess the situation, bringing on to that, what's going on. Does it truly seem malicious? Well, that goes back to, try to get my mouse up over on the screen. Does it truly seem malicious? That goes back to that whole item I was talking about originally with the ITIL framework, right? Properly categorizing things. Like an end user could say, oh my file changed. I don't know what's going on, right? And in your head, you might think, oh my God, this is ransomware. Or it could have been just the person accidentally changed the extension or associated the program, the file with a program that's not associated with it. So again, you have to really just try to figure out, hey, is this malicious? Is this an all hands on deck type of thing? Once you do that, you classify the type of incident. Like I kind of said earlier, these are the four major ones: unauthorized access, denial of service, malicious code. Data breach, unauthorized access is somebody getting into your systems, your emails, any type of ERP system you have. Denial of service is, obviously when you can't use your systems. Malicious code is when you have some sort of malware traversing the network. Data breach would be, hey, all of a sudden on a news group, your company's data is being posted. Okay, so that type of stuff is definitely needs to be investigated before declaring the type of incident. All right, once you kind of know what's going on, you could create an IOC and run them against other systems on the network. So it really depends on the type of incident, but when we talk about IOCs, we're going to look for like they're called indicators of compromise, right? What you're going to look for are you could create like you could say, hey, if this system has this file on it, that's an indicator of compromise. That's saying that this system has been breached and we have to take action on it. Also, the other thing is what you want to figure out is how did that breach actually occur, and to put protections in place so it doesn't happen again. I think back to an incident that I saw where basically a website kept getting hacked, right? So they had a good backup of it and they would just restore it and they would get hacked again. Good backup, restored again. And what ended up happening is that in the most simplistic level, there was a SQL injection vulnerability, which allowed somebody to basically drop tables for them and do whatever they want, essentially, if you have a bad enough SQL injection. So putting those protections in place by, either patching a system or, sanitizing a parameter or installing some type of antivirus so it doesn't keep happening again, right? That's also key. Again, tools, EDR can certainly help with this. And again, if you're not familiar with EDR, we're going to be demoing that shortly. Containment. So you want to, this all really depends on the incident, right? Certain things you're not going to need containment on, right? Like, for example, a denial of service attack, right? Usually it's targeted against, your what particular server or service, right? So what are you containing there? It's not spreading, right? But you still want to make sure that you can identify that and limit it and prevent it from happening. However, things like ransomware, that could spread, right? So you want to make sure that, in a case of some sort of malicious program moving through your system, you do want to maybe disconnect systems. Resetting passwords, you absolutely want to do that. If you have a breach on your internal network and somebody has domain admin credentials compromised, you definitely want to force a password reset, right? Communication is key. When you start bringing down systems, you have to tell your business unit, hey, we're doing this because of this. We want to make sure it's safe, okay? One incident I could think of, and it's a very old one, but it kind of highlights back how we're still not doing things correctly. There was HB Gary Federal, which was a security contractor for the federal government. They were targeted by that group Anonymous that I was mentioning earlier. And one of the things the CEO said, oh no, we can't let our website get hacked. Bring it down. We don't know what's going on. Just turn the website down. At the same time, the hackers were in their Gmail admin control panel, right? And they had full access. So, HB Gary was talking with, the Google administrators over at Google and say, hey, and they're like, we can't do that. We don't know you are who you actually say you are. And they were like, hey, I'll tell you what, let's go ahead. You host your own website, put this little watermark on your web page and we'll release admin access to you. Well, their website was down. So while this is all going on, the hacker group is ripping all their emails off the system. So, again, incident response planning, making sure that you have a good, valid plan in place. Eradication, again, in the sense of being, hey, normally it depends on the incident. Again, normally ends up being with a malware, or if a malicious user is in your system. Cleaning up, sometimes you have to delete the virus, right? Sometimes you have to rebuild an entire OS or restore it from backup. With email account breach, one of the things that you would definitely want to do is, reset a password and enable that two-factor authentication. And finally, with recovery, this is where you kind of return to normal operations. That's where that 280-day deadline kind of comes into place. You start restoring your services. Either you have some sort of redundant system because you had a good business continuity plan, or you can rebuild from scratch. The next most important thing you do is to make sure that everything is operating as expected, right? Make sure that all your data is there, that the data didn't get wiped, that there was valid backups, and things like that. And finally, some lessons learned follow-up. This kind of goes back to what you really want to look into with your your plan. Did your plan work? Did those little mini procedures work? Did you have a mini procedure, right? If not, go back and write one, right? Did detection occur in a timely fashion? That is key, right? How long were they in your system? Figure out where that failure happened so it doesn't happen again. So again, back into like kind of real talk. These are the major issues as I see them, is what's kind of going on right now. Compromised email accounts, compromised accounts. Okay, what can happen with a compromised account? It could lead to email forwarding, right? Meaning that when somebody's account's compromised, they could immediately set up an email forward alert to basically send all your emails elsewhere as they come in. I've seen this happening for years and years and years. Still an issue because people aren't doing proper procedures to protect it. Usually happens from a phish. And another thing that could happen is that we've been seeing a lot is somebody requests a account money transfer. Hey, I'm so-and-so, go ahead and transfer this money. I need this money. I'm the CEO. I'm in a tight spot, right? And unless you have those internal procedures built in, or you have some other procedure that kind of protects from that, you're gonna lose $30,000 potentially, right? Phishing, again, that kind of goes back to what I was just saying. Fake emails coming in from your CEO. Especially when we're dealing with a remote workforce, everybody's on email. You want to make sure you're being responsive. Normally CEOs aren't emailing, certain people, CFOs, managers, but any type of account can look like it's come from there. Something can look like it's coming from an actual IT administrator. You got to be very wary of those as well. I could think of one engagement that we did recently where we talked about, I'm sorry, it was almost a year ago now when I went around, but where I was able to call up a user and tell them, oh, I have to get on your system. And I started talking about what I did for Thanksgiving, how I fried turkey, immediately disarming her, had her install some tools that allowed me remote access into her machine. And then I completely just had her system and there was nothing that she could do about it. Another major issue, ransomware delivered via apt. So I'm going to highlight that in a little bit, what apt is, but apt stands for Advanced Persistent Threat. And what that is that those are those people that are in your system for a long time, right? Meaning they're in there, they usually start with an email or some type of vulnerability on an external system. And then they're in there and they're not there to get in and out. They're in there to learn your systems and then come up with a plan on really kind of decimating your systems, mainly through some type of ransomware attack normally, right? So different protections and actions that we can put in place, as live incident response, right? What we talk about is email accounts and unauthorized access. So you want to make sure that you set protections with your email login. You want to look at Microsoft 365 can detect suspicious logins, right? And on top, and Gmail has the same thing, the Google panel. Almost everybody out here, I imagine, there are a few send mail systems out there, but it seems like everybody, a good majority of people are on some version of Exchange, Microsoft 365, or the Google Cloud. But you could set these different protections in pretty much all these. Hey, we noticed a login from Singapore. Well, nobody's going to ever be logging in Singapore. So it immediately, if you have it in place, require multi-factor authentication, right? And then at the same time, you could get an alert because then that user's account's password has been compromised and you have to reset it. Review security defaults. And if a user has been compromised, you have to really go back and look at all their different emails. Like, what did they have in their email? Did they have usernames and passwords somewhere in an email? Did they have important documents somewhere in an email, right? A lot of people don't think about that. You think, oh, we have to just reset his password, he's good. No, because he could have had all sorts of sensitive information stored within his email, sensitive emails that somebody could potentially have. So you have to look at maybe somebody forwarded those emails off. Maybe somebody got into a document that had usernames and passwords that they shouldn't. And then you have to take further action on those items. As far as like automated systems, again, the cloud platforms are going to be the best thing to do for that type of stuff. Phishing protecting for the end users, end user training. Really, you gotta, if you're not doing this now, I mean, people fall victim to this stuff all the time. It's crazy. What you end up seeing out there, like, how did that person click on that? You would think, being an IT person, I'd be like, why would they do that? But some people just don't know. I mean, they don't know. They assume that, hey, this is a legitimate email. I got to click on it. I got to put on my username and password. As far as an end user goes, if you see something, report it. Don't just say, oh, I hope I don't get caught, right? And make sure that you go, oh, wait, hey, that didn't look right. I can guarantee you whoever's in charge is going to thank you for actually saying something rather than, keeping it quiet and ignoring it. And then finally with ransomware, once deployed, there's not really any protection in place. I'd also like to emphasize, like, some places, they go, well, decrypt ransomware. You can't decrypt ransomware. Let me say you can, however, you're not going to be able to do it for free. The only rare case where you might be able to do that for free is if the hacking group that developed that particular variant of ransomware has been found and the private key has been restored. The private key is the password to unlock the ransomware. Other than that, you're going to be paying some sort of threat actor, or you're going to rebuild your systems from scratch. So there's nothing you can really do. That's your two options: pay, rebuild, pay, rebuild. So you want to design a response plan specifically for this type of thing. It gets deployed normally now with that advanced persistent threat. So some of the things you want to do when you detect ransomware or an advanced persistent threat, I should say, is, disconnect them from the internet, log block external IP address communications to see if it's going out to any type of what's called a command and control server, disconnect your servers from the network, reset your domain admin passwords, remove any generic accounts. Once you do all that, you really want to look into resetting all users' accounts, because you still don't kind of know where it came in from originally, right? And that's just to kind of protect you in the meantime from getting reinfected or having some sort of persistent threat access into your system. All right, now that all that long-winded stuff is done, let's take a look at a couple of things. One of the things I'd like to highlight is, again, the dangers of an email account compromise. What I'm going to do is, what I have set up here is, this is Lucy, our phishing platform. And Lucy, it's pretty cool. It does highlight what, attackers can really do. I'm not going to go through the steps of making this attack, but it takes essentially 5 minutes for me to spin up this campaign. Okay. And then let's just kind of see what would happen if, an end user who didn't have that end user training got an email that might have told them, oh, hey, your new Microsoft 365 instance is ready. Let's go ahead. I'm going to launch that. I'm going to wait for it to say kind of what the, that the message is sent out. But when we get that email in, so if we look here, sorry, I have my emails open to everybody, and that's probably not a good thing. Here we go. We get an email in, it says, oh, hey, welcome to a new Office 365 account. It's from admin from a weird email address I don't really recognize. I don't know. It says Compass admin. Oh, it looks like the guy just maybe forgot to put in the S. Who knows, right? Maybe kind of look at the grammar, the spelling. But okay, yeah, maybe I'll go ahead and click on this. I don't know. Here we go. Oh, something went wrong. Try to use it again later on. Let's see. Try that one more time. Something went wrong. Okay, so I did click on that link, and then from there, something else could have happened where basically, you know, I could have ended up deploying ransomware. As you can see, I clicked on that link. It did look like a legitimate type of attack. Let's see if we were able to gather any type of data from that attack. Maybe we weren't able to really kind of detect anything from that particular attack, but let's see. All right, well, again, a live demo kind of messed me up there. It was supposed to basically give me a login page, and that didn't happen this time around, but hold on a sec. Oh boy, sometimes these things happen, right, people? Let me pull that open and different. I think it's because I had my history saved for something else here. There we go. Sorry about that. It's because I had a history built in. Sorry, I had clicked on the link earlier, so it was invalidating it. But here we go. Let's see what happens. That looks pretty legitimate, except for this off lice, right? It's definitely not off lice, but and it's also Microsoft 365. Now we get to something went wrong, right? Well, let's see if we actually ended up collecting any data like we should have earlier. We see the attack was successful. And let's see if we got my username password. Yeah, look at that. Okay, that worked out a little bit better. And look at that. So now I have that end user's email address and their password. Clearly, that's not my real email address and password, but as you can see, it collected it. Again, my little demo there messed up because I had clicked on it previously, testing it so it wouldn't mess up. But basically, I was able to collect that username and password. So, okay, well, what happens now, right? What happens now as an attacker, I have a foothold into your system. So now if you think about remote work, we have VPN, right? I could potentially access your VPN. I could get at your email. I could start forwarding an email. I could start looking at all this different stuff. And the user doesn't really know, right? Especially if they just click on it and they go, oh, something went wrong. I'm going to have to email my IT department, or they're just going to be like, ah, maybe I'll look at it later, right? So think about that. So again, one of the things you want to look at is, you know, potentially, now I got to reset that user's password, disable their VPN access, right? Start looking through all their different documents that they had access on. Do they have OneDrive? Is company sensitive information stored on OneDrive? Is customer sensitive information stored on OneDrive? Is personal information stored on OneDrive? All different things that you have to now respond to because that one little user clicking and entering in information on an email link. The other thing I'd like to highlight here is, is basically what I'm going to kind of show everybody now is what an advanced persistent threat kind of looks like. And before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and deploy an EDR solution to help us deal with that. So just give me 1 second while I pull this stuff up. So right now, we have a partnership with this company called Signet, and EDR, I'll go into a little more in depth of what it is, but let me show you kind of what it can do first, right? So right here, we have an unsuspecting server 2012 machine. Right now, this thing does have a couple of items on it that would be deemed malicious. However, I'm going to go ahead and kick off a little package I have here, and it's basically an advanced persistent threats simulator. So what this is going to do is it's going to try to move laterally through processes. It's going to elevate permissions. It's going to create connections to outside resources. And again, this is something that an advanced persistent threat actor is going to do. Now, your typical antivirus it's not going to know that, hey, this particular machine calling out to this IP address is going to be funny. It's not going to see that PowerShell command and go, hell, hey, that PowerShell command doesn't look right to me, right? Because PowerShell is not antivirus, right? PowerShell is not a virus, right? So what these advanced detection response systems really do is they look for anomalies, right? And then they try to tie it with other processes, and it gives you like a good overall view of what's going on. I think I have a chat here. Let me see. Classic live demos. Yes, thank you, Jared. All right, so let's go ahead and run apt simulator.bat. And let's go ahead and run this. All right, so right now, again, it's we're gonna, I have this queued up, okay? Before I do that, this doesn't have any antivirus or anything on it as of right now. I'm going to grab the SciNet scanner, and all good EDR systems will do something very similar to what SciNet is going to do for us. With SciNet, the great thing about this product, and I haven't seen this with other products, is that it has this model that you can have it almost worm itself through the network, right? Where it just continuously tries to install itself on any machines, right? So that's pretty cool. We're not going to do that necessarily right now, but scan network computers, it's going to look, it's going to see if it can find anything else. It might find one other server. There's dependencies, obviously. You have to have some sort of service available to respond to the SciNet installer. But, you know, it takes about a minute to get this going. And think about it, if you were in that's that continuous deployment model I was talking about. If you're in a live incident, you know, and you don't have something deployed like this, you know, something that installs quick and can propagate along the network is definitely something, a feature you want, because you're not going to be able to, if you have 50 servers and you have some type of incident and you don't know what the incident is, you know, going manually logging to each one isn't going to really do it for you. Okay, so let's go ahead and click finish. And now what I'm going to do is go ahead and run that apt simulator. Let's go ahead and proceed. And I'm going to run every single test possible. So again, it's going to try collect, command and control, credential access, defensive evasion, all this type of stuff is going to be happening. As you can see, things are kind of spinning up in the background there. As that's happening, SciNet should be kicking off and starting to, we see that it's trying to connect to command and control. And we should see SciNet starting to flag. It's probably already reporting in on the main engine. Let me go ahead and highlight that now. So with these enhanced detection response systems, if you look into them, right, they have, you know, these main threat panels, right? And the main difference between these and antivirus systems is with enhanced detection and response, you can actually respond to these incidents with a whole bunch of different tools. And we'll take a look at some of this right now. So, and this is kind of where enhanced detection and response really comes into play. If we look at, sorry, I'm just looking for the, here we go. So we have a couple of samples right here starting to come in. We have MIM.exe being detected. If we look into, we have curl.exe being detected. Let's see if we have any hosts. We have a host right here. Let's drill into this host, right? And the enhanced endpoint detection will say, hey, if you didn't have it on before, it's going to tell you, oh, when we first scanned, we found all this stuff, and provide you with a timestamp of the events that kind of go on, right? And that's where that correlation piece really comes into play that antivirus doesn't have. It's going to be able to tell you, hey, this came in here. Okay, well, now it tried to move over to this other host, or it did move to this other host, and it's basically running other processes, right? And then from there, what you can end up doing is, you know, drilling in and really investigating the incident, see different users that are logged into the system. If we look here into details, We have, all the different host name in there. We see the total CPU usage, the last time it had software updates. We look into traffic, right? Look at this, like a normal antivirus system isn't going to necessarily inform you that, hey, you have a potential open shell command and control being contacted. It's not going to tell you, all the nicks you have. It's not going to tell you the different Windows events that are popping up because of everything that's going on. You could create specific events to kind of look for in your threat hunting. All right. It's kind of look into file monitoring, different things that might be happening, different hashes for files, things of that nature is really what's going to allow you to respond to an incident quickly. So once you start seeing things like this through your forensics investigation, you'll be able to tell how a system got put in place or how a malicious process kicked off, the timeline for the process, right? And all the stuff that it communicated with along the way. On top of that, right, you know how I talked about, oh, hey, this ransomware got detected on 2 of our systems and it's spreading to 3, right? Well, you select those affected system, or you select the source of the system, and you could do something like disable the NIC, shut down the machine, disable that service. A lot of these things will throw up a scheduled task that will actually scour your systems looking for files to encrypt. You go disable that task, you kill it at the source. That's your live incident response. That's where your power really lies, is being able to dynamically and react to all these systems without a lot of manual intervention, right? So again, take this one scenario and pretend like you have about 50, 60, 70 servers. If you don't have something similar in place like this, you're going to be in a bad spot. And it all comes back to that, detection is key. If you're able to detect the incident and then you can respond a lot quicker using some level of system in order to, segment it out, contain it, and eradicate it, your world in business and in IT is going to be a lot easier. The other thing, and I don't think I'll be able to get it kicked off right now, but if you start building, and again, it starts popping up, and part of this, a lot of these tools, they actually have SOCs where these companies, Security Operations Center, where if they're monitoring this for you too, and they go, hey, this is kind of a big deal, and they'll send you an email, or you could send a specific incident to that SOC for further analysis, and then they could tell you, hey, this type of attack we commonly see this with an email that goes around that looks like this, that you could put in a search for your email system that says, hey, look for this email, wipe it, or tell everybody not to open it. Probably wipe it, probably be the best thing to do. Now, going back to our sample servers here, if you didn't have it deployed to multiple systems, oops, I don't have it in here. What you'd want to do is, get it on as many systems as possible. And the next thing you know, it's going to start picking up on stuff that it already knows. Right? Whoops, I didn't mean to kick that off twice. And right now, nobody's seeing it, but what's happening is that I'm getting emailed a lot right now. Sorry. Let me kick that back off, and let's go back to the panel while that's going off and kind of talk about some other things that we could do. We talked a little bit about indicators of compromise, right? So something that the system might not be picking up by default, but you being a super awesome security person like you are, right? You'd want to look into, oh, hey, let me see if there is anything that I know shouldn't belong. Oh, hey, look at that, badstuff.exe. That's obviously not good stuff, right? So if we go into our, our solution, how are you going to look for badstuff.exe on your network or on all your servers? Yeah, maybe you could script it. If you're good at scripting, typing that out, right? Or you could look into some sort of threat hunting, right? Same thing. If we look into threat hunting, you could define your own indicator of compromise with these systems, saying, again, so this isn't necessarily a virus, a virus detection system is not going to detect this because it doesn't have a virus signature for it, right? But if you tell the system, hey, this is bad, I want you to search for it, it's going to alert you up, and then you can set a playbook to go, hey, go through all my systems and wipe this bad boy out, right? So that is essentially what it comes down to, what you need in this day and age to really kind of handle these types of incidents, mainly. And what are we talking about? We're talking about malware spreading and ultimately advanced persistent threats, where people are moving processes laterally, right? You're escalating, you're getting privilege escalation, things like that aren't going to happen. I keep kicking this off, and it's trying to. That's not normal. It's because I clicked on it too many times. But again, the new system is going to start going through that same rules detection, and it's going to build off of what was already kind of detected. So let's go back to our panel here and just see if there's anything else kind of interesting that popped up. And again, look, so now we see, oh, PowerShell, right? Again, PowerShell regexe, that's not a bad thing, but it sees a pattern that shows that somebody is using it for malicious processes, right? Malicious purposes. So when you kind of look at this type of stuff, drill in here, you could see exactly what it's doing. Like, why is this popping? Well, because of all the stuff that it's clicking on here, okay? Now, might it be a true incident? Maybe not, but that's what that investigation piece is all about. So alerts, start looking into that. Occurrences will show you, hey, where else is this happening at? I have tons of historical data in here because I've run this a bunch, so that's why, but it'll show you all the different servers it's happening at. And again, that allows you to respond in a much quicker way, okay? Another interesting one here is users. I think, yeah, this one doesn't have it detected, but one of the attacks is it enables the guest account. It's like, who has a guest account enabled anymore, right? So in summary, right? In summary, enhanced detection response, sometimes referred to XDR, that's what we just saw. And it's a solution that detects everything across your environment. It detects like possible shells going out, and it allows you to investigate the entire life cycle. Now, it only lets you really kind of do that if you had it installed at the time of incident, or if you have a trained person that knows, hey, we've seen this incident before, let's run all the machines through this playbook and look for these indicators of compromise, right? But an EDR system is really kind of where it's at. Some of the ones that, that I'm familiar with, Cynet, it's a Compass partner. CrowdStrike is probably a very familiar name that people are aware of. I bought some stock in CrowdStrike a while ago and it keeps going up. So stock tip by Jesse there. Carbon Black is VMware solution. Obviously, they know how malicious incidents look like on VMware a lot. So it's, again, there's tons of different systems out there. Do your due diligence. A lot of them aren't cheap, especially like when you're talking about CrowdStrike and Carbon Black. But if you also kind of go back to where we were talking about $200,000, $3.86 million, that's just a fraction of the cost. These systems are a fraction of the cost of what an actual big cyber incident will be. You know what? I think that's it. I wish I had, thinking back, hopefully we didn't bore anybody with those incident response. Everybody's heard them, but again, I felt like it was very important to emphasize all that stuff. And I appreciate everybody kind of, attending and listening to me rant on.